with the emergence of free trade, the entry of China into the World Trade Organisation, the liberalisation of trade globally, it has had a profound impact on the manufacturing industry in Australia.
So how come that can't explain today's job losses? How come that explains your job losses, but not these ones that happened under the Rudd government?
Well, having said that, there has been an increase in manufacturing in certain areas in Australia. For example, Australian innovation in relation to cochlear ear implants means that they are manufactured in Australia and exported overseas. Isn't that a great thing for Australia? That's high-tech manufacturing. But ultimately, it is going to be incredibly difficult for Australia to compete with a China or a Korea or many other jurisdictions in Asia where there has been a significant economic downturn, where there is massive growth in unemployment, where wage costs will be dropping because of the incredible flexibility of their workplaces. For Australia to compete, it's going to get harder. Not easier, it's going to get harder. And you have to convince the people that run the manufacturing companies that it's a good idea to continue with their Australian operations. It won't be just money, it has to be the fact that Australia will continue to buy their products.
Well, do you think that some of those people and some of those companies may see an opportunity to take steps they've long wanted to take to move manufacturing to cheaper nations and use this global financial crisis as the excuse to do so?
I think many CEOs today are not looking to make to use the global financial crisis as an excuse for anything other than keeping their companies afloat. And this is one of the challenges, Leigh. We now have the federal government entering into the bond market in a very aggressive way, unlike it has before, borrowing money in competition with those companies that are desperately trying to raise capital, that are deleveraging. But if they are engaged in the credit market, they are trying to compete with the federal government. And this is the great challenge for Australia over the next few months. With the 800-pound gorilla of the government involved in the credit markets, how on earth are small and medium-sized businesses in Australia going to be either able to raise capital, new capital, or else get adequate refinancing for the challenges in the months ahead? This is the issue that we need to face.
We've heard figures come out of Japan today that their exports have collapsed by 45%. Given that they're one of Australia's biggest trading partners, what are the implications of that for us?
Well, one of the biggest implications, of course, is for the coal industry, because we are a massive exporter of coal to Japan. This is a challenge we face, not just with Japan, but of course with all of our other major markets. And this is one of the reasons why you need to focus on opening new markets, if you can, to find ways to continue to keep people in work. And certainly it is the case that we are facing a significant downturn in exports. But, there are some areas, such as soft commodities, which are holding up because of extraordinary weather conditions in South America and in China.
Mr Hockey, you're talking about Australia looking for alternate markets. What possible alternate markets are there for our coal and steel at this time?
Well, that is a challenge with those particular commodities, but obviously in soft commodities there are opportunities. People still need to eat. People still need to import soft commodities to manufacture a whole range of different goods, particularly in China. The world is facing the challenge that you've had an inventory build-up for an extended period of time, particularly in China, but in other jurisdictions as well. That inventory will be used over time. Manufacturing will come back in those jurisdictions. Australia needs to be ready with the available resources to get to market quickly at an affordable price.
OK, you said our exports are likely to suffer, which could cost jobs. The current unemployment forecast for Australia for 2009-2010 is 7%. The US has revised its unemployment figure up to 9%. Given the sort of figures we're seeing coming out of Japan, is it possible, or as the Shadow Treasurer, do you think that perhaps the Australian unemployment forecast is too low?
Well, Leigh, you're asking me to look into numbers that I'm not qualified to look into.
Well, you're the Shadow Treasurer.
Well, but I'm not an economist, and I'm certainly not going to pretend to be one. I think there's plenty of economists out there ready to give public and private advice. in relation to the forecasts. It really does depend on how long and how deep this downturn is. What I fear for in particular is small business and independent contractors. The last time there was a significant economic downturn, the number of independent contractors and small businesses in Australia was probably around 500,000 to 600,000. Today it's about 2 million. And a lot of companies have engaged independent contractors to do work. And those people may have contracts with for services that are severely diminished by this downturn. They may not necessarily fall into the ABS stats of unemployment. So whilst unemployment is an important indicator of an economic downturn, underemployment and a lack of economic activity more generally through the growth figures will be equally, if not more important.
Ben Bernanke, the Federal Reserve Chairman in the US, predicted today that there's a reasonable prospect that the current recession will end this year and that next year will mark the start of recovery. What's your assessment? I
love his positive thinking. I love his positive talk.
Do you agree?
Look, again, you know what, Leigh, I always, I'm a cautious fellow. I'm prudent with money, I'm very careful with money, and I'm cautious. And naturally, I would say, I would hope, and I would really hope, that we see an economic recovery at the end of this year, but it's best that we prepare for the worst, so that we have the capacity to get out of trouble should we find that this is a longer and deeper recession than anyone expected.
Mr Hockey, you've spent more time with Kevin Rudd than almost anyone else in the Parliament, particularly anyone else on your side of the House. Just how toxically boring is he?
Oh, that's a very good question. I don't have an answer to that.
That's very diplomatic of you.
Well, for all his faults, he is still a mate. I don't think he should be Prime Minister, but he is. And I'm not going to provide running commentary on him other than what he does, and running commentary on what he does and what he says. As for Kevin Rudd, the human being, others can form their opinion.
Well, you'll probably still be on the Christmas card list this year with that answer. Joe Hockey, thanks very much.
I did get one with a stencilled signature, Leigh, so it wasn't that good.
Thanks, Joe Hockey.
See you later.
Bye-bye.